welcome, everyone. A few technical difficulties, as I predicted, but happy to finally be here and welcome to you all. Again, apologies for technical difficulties, and I'm glad some of you have found us again. I'm here with Lori Olson White, and as you notice, we're not Barbara Kin. Barbara's having a happy family event today. I thought I'd include that it was happy. So she left me in charge, and we see what's happened to that, hey? We're having a crazy startup today, Kyla. You bet.
She makes it look so easy, right?
I know, exactly. Oh, and Barbara's here to check up on us. Actually, she's responding to all my hectic text messages saying, like, I can't do this. Oh, we were having a few Android versus Apple issues, me being the Android person. But here we are. Welcome. So happy to have Lori Olson White with me today and everyone else joining us. So, excuse me, I'm going to cough now. What we wanted to talk about a bit today on this Projectkin Live was, first of all, to let you know what's coming up on Kathy's Corner, which is scheduled for Thursday, October 23rd. And Barbara's got to go already. So I think she's now that, so I guess that means we could talk about Barbara in the chat too, people.
We're on our own.
We're on our own. Yeah. Lori and I are in charge now. So if we disappear, it's something I did. We'll put it that way. But this week on Coming Up with Projectkin on Kathy's Corner on Thursday, at this point, we're going to talk about metadata with a special guest. I decided I know a bit about metadata, but I'm not an expert. So I've invited Maureen Taylor, the photo detective, to talk to us all about metadata, which is, for those of you who don't know, is all the details that can be attached to photos. We can do it manually with scans, or if you've ever looked at all the stuff that your camera or your phone attaches to your photos, that in fact is metadata. It's been around forever, and I'm not even going to try and say when it started. I'll let Maureen talk about that. But if you follow Maureen on Substack, Maureen had a disaster of a pipe bursting in her house. So I have offered her the possibility to reschedule for a different time. So we'll keep you posted on Projectkin events if we look to a different topic for Thursday. But so far, that's the plan. I'm quite looking forward to talking with Maureen. I've long followed Maureen and all of her information. Hi, Jim Bowers. Welcome. And so that's tentatively, we're hoping to talk about metadata with Maureen Taylor on Thursday, October 23rd. Go to the event page on Projectkin. I'm sure when Barbara posts this, she'll post links to register for that session. And then I wanted to let you know about what's happening. If any of you looked ahead, Kathy's Corner will be on American Thanksgiving this year. So we won't. There's only a couple days that Barbara cancels events, and we decided Thanksgiving, not a good day. So we're going to not have it on November. One in November at all. And December's happens to fall on Christmas Day. So for those who celebrate, we thought, well, that's probably not a good day either. So we have decided to combine the two of them because it's such a busy time of year. And so Kathy's Corner will be on December 4th. And what we're going to talk about there, and I'm inviting you now to send me a note that you would like to join us and tell your story. I want to talk about postcards and the stories that they tell. And I'm sure everyone's come across them in postcards. I saw a post the other day that said that someone was in one of other groups I belong to said, I have a postcard with a picture on it. Is that like a real picture? And so I chimed in and said, absolutely, because photos were often turned into postcards. And that may be the only photo you have of that will be that postcard. So don't throw it away thinking it's just a postcard. So that's what we're going to talk about. I have one, in fact, that's my grandfather when he joined the British Navy prior to World War I. And it's a postcard. So we'll talk about that. And Lori, have you got a postcards in your collection?
I've got a couple that are from very extended family. I don't know that I've got any from my, like my direct line families, but I've come across a ton of them, of course. And like you said, they look like they're postcards, and the first time you see them, you're like, is this a fake? Is this my family, or is it just somebody else? And that's where that verification of pictures comes from, right? Where you have other pictures and you can say, this is this one. I think the one that I do have, oddly enough, is a picture of a coffin at a cemetery covered with flowers. And it's like the brother of my great grandfather, I guess it would be. And apparently I don't know a lot about how you can talk about that, but apparently it was a picture that they sent out to family that didn't make it to the funeral, which
Mhm.
seems like a really odd custom. But I think it's about the same time that they were taking pictures of dead kids, right? Remember they
Yes.
did that? So I think that
Yes.
was that Victorian time when that was just kinda how they
Well,
memorialized it.
how you included people who may not have been able to make it to the service.
Right, yeah, yeah. So, I think that's probably the one that comes right to mind when we were talking about, postcards, is that one of the I mean, mountains of flowers on this
Yeah.
card. Yeah.
And that sounds like a reasonable thing that people may have done, was to send out a note, much like what we would send out now, an in memoriam or an obituary or something to everyone who didn't, and maybe even as the for people who came, the thank you for attending. And
Mhm.
I know in the collection of different collections of families collections, I've seen lots of photos of coffins and grave,
Yeah,
like grave sites with of the coffin being
yeah.
lowered and all sorts of things. So it was a very common custom,
Yeah,
I think.
and when you think about it, pretty practical considering the transportation challenges that people had, and how else are you gonna get to you're not getting the local paper. They would have the obituary, and, there weren't telephones at some point, uh, so what a great way to let relatives know, right?
Exactly. And for anyone who's just joined and you're wondering, where is Barbara? Um, Barbara left me up to my own devices today. Barbara is celebrating a happy family event this weekend. And so Lori generously offered to assist me in hanging out with you on Projectkin Live. So we've talked a bit about what's coming up with Kathy's Corner. And in December, we're going to talk about postcards. And I welcome anyone who has a postcard with a great story, or even one that you're puzzled about, to send me a note. Message me through Kathy Stone on Substack. Send me a message and say, hey, I'd like to participate on December 4th, because it's going to be, I'm not going to give a lecture, and you're all heaving a sigh of relief, not going to give a big lecture on postcards and their history. I'll give you a little background, but I talked about them in another Kathy's Corner before. But more, we want to look at what are some of the cool stories that we find in postcards. I know Barbara's already mentioned that she's got a story to tell us. I'm reaching forward. Sorry for the extreme close up. Barbara sent me a couple postcards that I think her daughter found them in there's one of a house.
Yeah.
And it's a postcard. And then another one of this woman standing by a house. I think it's the same house. And her daughter found these in and where we sadly find many photos and things, in a thrift store. But they are from a small town in Alberta, and I guess she knew about me telling Barbara my connection to small town Alberta, where my grandparents immigrated to. And so she said, gave them to Barbara, and Barbara sent them to me. And one of our very longtime listeners, Linda Tether, had looked up a bunch of because she lives in Calgary, where I live in Alberta. She's looked up a bunch of information on where this town was, which appears to no longer even be a town. So I'm hoping, fingers are crossed, depends on weather now, that maybe Linda and I can take a field trip out there and try and find this town and see if we can find anything out about these total strangers that are on this postcard. So,
Yeah.
so that's, hopefully we'll get that done. But
And, going into the thrift shops in the places where your relatives and your ancestors lived is a hoot, because you just never know what you're gonna come across, and, I've done it before where I've had a list of the names that I know, but then kind of the extra names that I know are in the community that were part of that friends and family network of my ancestors, and I've actually found a couple of them where it's like, "Oh, this must be," it's an old picture or it's a postcard, maybe from a trip or, something else that connects you to it. I've also found, I think I found two or three on eBay too,
Mhm.
that I just have an alert on for family names.
That's a really good idea, Lori, to put an alert on eBay for looking for your family names to find things, because you don't know where they might have ended up.
Right, yeah.
Because my grandparents, as I said, immigrated from England, and so in 1929, and they lived on a farm, and then they moved to the town. of Vermilion, and then in their older years they moved to Edmonton. So they lived a bunch of places, and you'd probably be more likely to find stuff in the thrift store in Edmonton where all their daughters and son lived, getting rid of stuff,
Yeah.
than in the town they lived in.
Yeah.
So
Right, and you
it's
never know if, if when like now when you go to an auction and you get a box and there's stuff in the bottom of it and it's like, and you send it on, a lot of times they have a life of their own. They end up places you
yes.
never imagined that really don't have any connection, anymore to the
Hmm.
families.
And it is amazing. Like we'll talk about thrift stores. While we're on the topic. I've found I again I have a love of old photos, and I've now been collecting. I wanted samples of cabinet cards and carte de visite, and I found a whole bunch of cabinet cards in a thrift store. From a family that obviously were from Germany originally, but obviously immigrated at some point to Canada because their cards ended up in a thrift store in southern Alberta, and it's always fascinated me to try and track down who these people are and see they're if people are looking for them.
Yeah, I've
Because I'd
actually
be thrilled if somebody said, "Oh, are you related to this person? Because I found this postcard." And I go, "Yes."
That's actually happened to me. Several years ago, I got, just a package in the mail, and it was, from a lady, and she said that she'd gone on one of my trees and she'd found this picture, and it was this cute, just adorable little girl, and went on Ancestry and found her in my tree and sent it to me. And then I forwarded it on to, the closer family members, but it was just the most thoughtful thing. And I've
Yeah.
always said I should do that, and I haven't gotten around to that, but, maybe
So on
someday.
our
Yeah,
list of projects that we're
right.
doing. So
Do
what are you working on right now, Lori?
right
Or
now,
what many things?
I've got a couple of 'em. I'm working on a super big project that I've been working on for about 3 months, um, that's just I'm just still just in the research part of it, but it's one of those stories that is so cool that I wanna keep pushing on it, and I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but
Okay, cool.
but it's a story about a woman's story, and I'm really excited to bring it out. I'm not sure how long it's gonna take me. I'm thinking it might be a year or so before I get that one out the door. So I'm working on that one kind of as a side gig. Um, I got all of my Halloween stuff out. I've got that already. That was a
Oh,
lot of fun. I went into spiritualism instead of going the ghost and
ooh,
goblins kind of thing. So that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about, you know, during the Civil War, there was a I'm gonna back up. Years ago, I watched a, a documentary on how the Civil War changed death in America. It's a it's a
ooh,
it's a really, really good hard to watch, but it's really good, and it stuck with me, and so I thought I would talk about the Civil War and how it changed,
yeah.
how America changed a little bit, and so I went after the spiritualists because, there was such a thing as a good death before the Civil War, a Victorian good death, right? You were surrounded by your loved ones, and they all, wished you well, and it was all this, a real happy thing. Not happy, but okay. And when all the people were dying in the Civil War, there was a belief that those dead weren't getting to heaven because they hadn't had a good death. And so there was a shift in American
Yeah.
culture on what a good death meant. And that's when the spiritualists kind of stepped in and helped, kind of carry the load for that emotional burden of what happened to the men and women that were not in the battlefield. And so I kind of went into that for Halloween. So that was a
Oh,
lot of fun. And then
sounds fascinating.
yeah, yeah, it's a great topic, and I think it's one I'm gonna chase up a little bit deeper too. I found some really interesting characters that I didn't have the time. October's only so long, right? Um, and then I just got done with all the Christmas stuff, so I'm gonna have some fun Christmas stuff.
Oh,
Last year at
good.
Christmas, I told a story for the whole month. This time I'm telling just a bunch of different short stories, but um, there's some cool ones. I'm super excited about that. So
Yeah.
I'm working on a bunch of new things for the new year.
And those of you who don't follow Lori now, you should follow Lori. I'm counting on Barbara. I'll put all the links in this when she posts the video. Might not be till tomorrow because I'm going to do that. I don't think I have any idea how to do that. So, but do check out Lori's Substack because there's some fascinating. Lori knows I've absolutely loved her series on Rose Hayward and the Colorado ship. That was just fascinating.
You know, I thanks for bringing that up, actually. So, if you haven't read that story, plug your ears for just a second. But at the end of the fourth part, I kind of get off the rails and I talk about one of the immigrant families that was in steerage and what happened to them. And what happened was two of the kids, they fell through the cracks. Nobody knows. And I spent about 5 months trying to put this story together and spent a good portion of that time trying to find these kids. And I've not been able to. But there's a whole bunch of different research avenues that I didn't have the time to go through. And I'm thinking about doing a collaborative research project with other researchers that maybe live in areas or have an interest or a specialty in a certain kind of documentation, like going into orphan records and adoption records in New York and probably Chicago and things like that. So if anybody's interested in doing that kind of a bigger collaborative project, I'm thinking about, because I don't want to leave those kids not knowing where they are. Yeah. So if anybody would be interested or has an interest in one of those topics, let me know because I'm gonna keep pushing on it, but I don't know that I can do it all by myself.
Yes.
So
Jennifer just commented, "What a wonderful idea." And Diane Burley had mentioned that that series was fantastic. So, and indeed it was. So check that one out. Barbara's going to post the links. I'm working. I'll give you a little preview. Don't want to steal any thunder, but I'm going to be a guest on Speaker's Corner with Jennifer Jones. In November. So I got to work on a story for that. So I'm working on that. And I was mentioning to Lori yesterday, I was working on one of these lingering projects that you look at every time. We call them big scary boxes. And this was a trip we took in 1929 to England. And I was younger then. I was 9 years old. So you can figure out how old I am now. And we went with my mom. So my mom, my aunt, and uncle, my dad.
You said
Sorry?
you weren't around in 1929.
69, yes. We took my grandmother back, so we went on a trip to England, took my grandmother who immigrated to Canada in 1929, took her back home for the first time in 40 years and traveled all over England. And so the scrapbooks in there's one that I made when I was 9 or 10, which apparently I got bored of after about 10 pages and stopped doing, and everything is just laying on the pages. And my mother's was quite elaborate, but she used Scotch tape to put the pictures in it. Cringe. And white glue later when I guess she realized the Scotch tape didn't hold. So I'm trying to piece together all these things that are in this box, and there's a big pile of memorabilia and trying to figure out what I can put together to capture that trip. But I'm lucky my aunt that went with us. She's a very good source because she always organized her photos and labeled them. So most of her stuff is labeled, and she wrote a diary of her trip. So this is priceless. So that's kind of what I'm working on. And
great.
And again, I guess we're at 11:30 already. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Lori, for helping me out. My apologies at the beginning for the technical difficulties. And
but we made it.
Kathy's Corner will happen on Thursday. Keep an eye on the Projectkin page to see what the topic is. I'm hoping Maureen's able to join us, but if not, we'll pivot to something else and we'll get Maureen to come back when she's got a little bit less going on in her life than she does right now. And so have a great Sunday, everyone. I don't know if it's Monday somewhere, Monday if it's already Monday somewhere. It looks very nice where Lori is outside there, and a nice Sunday. So enjoy your Sunday, and we'll hopefully see you on Thursday at Kathy's Corner.
And thanks for joining us today. Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.